Greetings, this is Spec Ops 56 coming to you from the much less waterlogged state of South Carolina. We are now in the recovery phase, and so I thought that this would be a good time to go ahead and do my after action report and prep analysis. Be referring to my notes here. Over the course of our flood emergency, we had, I believe the total was maybe 19 deaths. I might be wrong on that, but I think that's the last number I heard. There were, and still are, a lot of bridges down, a lot of damaged dams, and a lot of road closures. And while things are moving, the traffic around parts of Columbia are a true nightmare due to the road closures. I will say that the city and the state have been doing one hell of a bang-up job at working their asses off trying to fix things and get things back to normal. After a week on the boil water advisory for the entire city of Columbia, they finally lifted it, and the water is safe again. I gotta say bravo Zulu, because that was a big deal. But on to my prep analysis. I thought I would share with you some observations, some lessons learned, and some things that I saw as holes and weaknesses in my preps. Overall, my preparations stood me in really good stead. Most of the holes and weaknesses that I'm going to talk about are more from more of a convenience point of view. So let me get started with that. I'll start with the weaknesses and holes in my preps. My water supply, my emergency stored water supply, held out really well. During the during the boil advisory period of a week, we used our storage water for drinking and washing of dishes, washing. I used it for sponge bathing, and we used it for brushing our teeth and that sort of thing. My wife was able to use the water after the first day. My wife was able to use the water from the showers because they said it was safe for bathing. But because of my suppressed immune system, I wasn't going to take any chances, so I continued to sponge bathe. The two of us, we had used up 2 cases of some Dasani bottled drinking water that we already had for drinking and cooking. It lasted us 7 days. And we used about 3 gallons of a 5-gallon jug of storage water for mostly for the brushing of teeth, the sponge bathing, and that kind of thing. So that wasn't too bad. Of course, there were also the water that was in food, canned food, and that sort of thing. Now, as far as my the holes in my preps, one I noticed right off is that I need to get a camp shower, one of those where you fill up the bag and you can hang it up, and then it's got the shower end on it, and it's gravity fed, and you can use that. That's more for my wife because she wanted to be able to wash her hair, and that would make it much easier for her to do so and to take a shower. So I'll be getting one of those. Now, while we never lost power and we never lost running water, because of that, we didn't use up nearly as much of our storage water as we would have otherwise. We were very fortunate there. Our storage water would probably not have lasted us nearly as well if we'd had to use it for things that we could boil the water for. And that brought up something that I thought of that I needed to add to my preps, and that would be some water purification substances. So that if we did not have the power, so we could use our electric stove for boiling the water, this would save me having to use my emergency cooking and heating fuels just for the purpose of boiling the water. And that would be stock up on some water purification tabs or some stabilized oxygen or colloidal silver, any of those. I personally have had experience with both the water purification tablets and the stabilized oxygen. I prefer the stabilized oxygen because it leaves no taste. That way we could have treated the water without having to boil it, and we would not have used up precious fuel if we did not have power. Another thing, the fact that we had running water meant that we were able to flush the toilets without any problem. And that got me to thinking that I am not nearly as prepared as I should be for a lack of running water toilet facilities. I could have improvised something for the short term with some 5-gallon buckets, whatever garbage bags we had on hand, that sort of thing. But it would not have been very pleasant and wouldn't have lasted very long. So I need to start looking in terms of a longer term answer to an alternate toilet facility. Also, I believe that we could certainly use more storage water, especially if this had occurred a month or so ago, back when the temperatures were running 100+ degrees every day. We would have had to go through much more water, and our storage would not have lasted us nearly as long. So I'm going to be adding some more water to our water storage. And one other thing that I should have thought of and simply didn't, and that was baby wipes. Baby wipes are very handy when you're on limited water. You can use it as a means of bathing. It will keep you relatively clean, especially in between sponge baths. It'll allow you to go much longer without a sponge bath. It'll give you a way to wash your hands when they're not especially dirty, but prior to cooking, that sort of thing. So I intend to stock up on baby wipes. Now, a few lessons learned during this week. One is that having a good supply of paper plates and plastic utensils goes a long way toward not dirtying up a lot of dishes, towards saving on your water so you don't have to use it for dishwashing purposes. We happen to have some plastic utensils and paper plates that we had left over for some other things. I intend to stock up more on that because they came in very handy. Another thing is that we, in order to save on piling up dirty dishes and having to wash dishes, we pulled various canned foods like beef stew, that sort of thing, out of our food storage. That way, because we still had power, we could just dump it on the paper plate or in the paper bowl and stick it in the microwave. And that way we didn't have to do a lot of cooking. Also, the Mountain House type freeze-dried foods also saved us quite a bit of trouble and water where we didn't have to dirty up dishes. So I'll be stocking up on more of that sort of thing as well. A police scanner is useful, especially a battery-powered handheld type. It's useful so that you can listen in and find out what sorts of things are going on in your area, what kind of flooding, what kind of rescues, the police emergencies, what they're talking about in your area. I spent a fair amount of time listening to mine, and I did find it very useful. So I would recommend getting a good police scanner. Let's see. One thing I did find is that it's really hard to remember not to go washing your hands or rinsing out your coffee cup in the tap water. You're so used to doing that every day that you just automatically reach over, turn on the tap, start washing your hands. So I think next time around, if this occurs, I'm going to make up a sign or something to put on the taps, just so to help me remember not to start washing my hands in the tap water. Let's see. And then just a few general observations. The 2-meter activity, radioactivity, was not nearly as active as I thought it would be. I thought that there'd be a lot more hams on the 2-meter locally, talking about the situation where they were and that sort of thing, but maybe it was just the times that I was monitoring. I only heard just a little bit, so that surprised me. It's the same thing for the CB activity. I heard absolutely no activity on the CB radio at all, and that really surprised me. I thought that there'd be a lot of people in cars, a lot of truckers out there that would be reporting on any problems and flooded out roads, but I heard nothing. It could be just because I'm in kind of a radio hole here in this neighborhood. Or it might be that maybe cell phones have replaced CBs in cars and trucks. The only damage that we suffered here at my house from all the excess rain and water was in my container vegetable garden. All the tomatoes on my tomato plants literally exploded. They just took up more water than they could hold, and it was like a firecracker went off inside the tomato and it just went kapooey. And then the last general observation that I will make is that the one thing that you can count on, no matter what the disaster, the Jehovah's Witnesses will always show up at your door. They showed up at my front door like the second day of the emergency. They did not have time to do anything except look at my door as it opened and then closed again. But you can count on the Jehovah's Witnesses showing up at your door. And that way you know that it's not quite the end of the world yet. Well, that's my notes, my observations and analysis concerning my own preps and things that I saw and have thought about during this. On the next thing, I will have John have a seat here, and he will tell you his experience and analysis of what he went through. because he lives a fair ways away from me, more out in the country. And so I think you'll find his experiences enlightening as well. Okay, John, I'd like you to tell your story, your after-action report, how things happened out in your area, how they affected you, how your preps came into play, and what you found that worked, what didn't work, any weaknesses or holes you discovered in your preps, anything that you're going to do for the future to improve that, and any general observations that you made over this emergency period.
Okay.
So, take it away, John.
All right. I live about 12 miles north of Columbia in a little small town called Blythewood. Population about 2,200. I prepped a little bit before the storm came. I went ahead and stocked up on a little bit of food. Got what water I figured I would need when this came. By the time it arrived, we had lost power for a number of hours. And I'm on well water, so the water went away. Relied on my stockpile of fresh water in containers. One thing I realized is I didn't have enough containers of water. Food was fine. To try to get out and go somewhere, that was impossible for 2 days. Both directions from my home were flooded out. One was a bridge, one was a culvert. After that subsided, we were able to get out and about. But there were so many other roads blocked in the area that it was just safer to stay at home until we could get out at a later time. As far as prepping more, I should have had paper plates and plastic utensils to eat on. Regular glassware and stuff doesn't last but maybe 2 meals and you don't have any. As far as the food, I have gas, so we were at least able to cook whatever we wanted in between power out and all that. But that was basically it. I know when I go to re-prep, I'm going to have more supplies for water and also for eating. And that's about it. I can't think of too much other.
Any observations in general of about how things went in this flood emergency? Thank people around you, your neighbors, things like that. Anything that you noticed?
Being where we live, we weren't too worried about being washed out, even though a small creek runs behind my home and down to where my brother used to live. And it turned his front yard and the other neighbor's backyard into a pond, which run down to the creek, which overflowed one of the roads. But we weren't going to go anywhere. The neighbors did okay. Like I said, we did pretty good for the time that we were out. But I do know I do need to prep a little bit more.
How many people did you have to take care of with the water for drinking, and how much water did you think you went through?
I went through about 12 gallons. There was 4 of us, and needless to say, it did not last long.
No.
One other thing that you may not think you need is bathroom toilet paper. You need to bulk up on that. It keeps for at least a year before it starts to not be as good as it was. And it also helps to have some water for flushing.
So for 4 people, you went through 12 gallons of water for drinking in how many days?
I think it was 3 total.
Okay, so you got your power back after that, and you could pump from your
the pump came on and everybody hit the showers.
Okay, well then that's a pretty good guide to figure out how many gallons per person you're going to need at a minimum for this kind of emergency.
Yeah, at least I figure 5 gallons per person would probably suffice.
And you had water. You were flushing a toilet.
Yeah, we have one toilet in the house that will flush on 1.5 gallons.
And you were using part of that 12 gallons was used for that?
Yeah, that's all I had.
So that 12 gallons was for drinking. Were you washing with it?
Just basically a pail of water and a bar of soap and a rag, just kind of like a sponge bath thing.
And drinking and flushing.
Right. Needless to say, it didn't last long.
Well, for 3 days, doing that much with it for 3 days, just about 12 gallons for 4 people.
Yeah.
Y'all did pretty good, I think.
Yeah. And now I realized I had 250-gallon drums that had filled basically up, and I didn't realize that until after this was over. So I've got 100-gallon storage for flushing needs now.
Yeah, and then there is those sources in your house that most people don't think about, like your water heater. You know, that's
right.
20, 30 gallons.
Yeah, in our case it's 80, so that would have been a lot of help.
And if you have to, you can drink the water in the tank of the toilet.
Right.
Not the bowl, but the tank.
Right.
Okay. And I'm sure there's other things, you know, ice that was in the ice maker. You could
drink that.
You could drink that.
Yeah, or in the storage tray.
And of course, the fluids that are in the canned goods that are
correct.
And then whatever you had drinking wise that was in your refrigerator.
Yeah, we had Kool-Aid and tea. So that helped a little bit.
Yeah. So you have to think about all these things.
But next time I'm gonna get more storage water, because you just don't know how long you're gonna be without power.
Yeah. And water you got to have.
Yep.
Most of us can go without food for quite a long time before we start having problems.
But you gotta have the water.
But you got to have the water. And especially if this had hit 2 months earlier, when we were having 100+ degree weather every day,
it would have been horrible.
And especially with no power to run air conditioning, you know, we would have been in a bigger world of hurt than we already were. So, all right, John, I appreciate your contribution to the after action report. And so until next time, this is Spec Ops 56 and my fellow survivor, John, saying so long.
Till the next time.
Bye.